Hello, this is Dave Hurwitz, Executive Editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk to you about the Schubert Unfinished Symphony. You know the tune, right? This is the symphony that Schubert never finished. You know, one of those music appreciation things. My mother taught me that when I was a little kid, so you can blame her. Anyway, we already covered Schubert's Ninth. And if we covered the Ninth, that means a lot of the discs that contain the Ninth also contain the Eighth. And all of those are equally recommendable, as it should happen. So we're going to go through a few of those briefly, and then talk about recordings that I didn't talk about before. Because, you know, there's always more, right? And so many of them are excellent. There are three of them that I want to mention initially because I don't have the discs sitting here with me. They're in boxes, you know, those giant box things. And giant box things they're convenient because you could get rid of a lot of discs and get the box. They're inconvenient because if I'm talking to you, I need to have a megalith here, and it doesn't always help. I have one small lith here that we'll be talking about briefly in a moment. But those are Klemperer, who is fantastic. He's also really good in the Ninth, but his unfinished Klemperer is so good when he does gloom. You know, no one does gloom better than Klemperer did. It's wonderful, especially the first movement. And Bernstein with the Concertgebouw on Deutsche Grammophon. A commentator very smartly reminded me of his Ninth with the Concertgebouw, which is also absolutely superb. I mean, those were a couple of the best discs that late Bernstein that he ever did. Those beautiful performances with the Concertgebouw. Completely lyrical, non-interventionist, exciting performances. And that unfinished is gorgeous too. So I'm throwing those out there initially so we know about it. Now let's go through some of the recordings that we did last time, just to remind you. Sándor Vég, genius. He does a great Ninth. He does a great Eighth. You really can't do better. This is on Brilliant Classics, but they've been released in various different combinations, including one that's just vague. This has just vague. I mean, it sounds vague, right? You know, like diffuse. No, Sándor Vég. But also, this comes with Roy Goodman and the Hanover Band doing the first, 4 symphonies. Blech! That's all we need to say about that. But for Vég, it's definitely worth having. Also, Charles Munch in Boston, one of the great unfinished of all time. You cannot do better. It's absolutely stunning. So is the Ninth. This is one of those discs that you just have to have. No matter what, you have to have it. I don't even care if you don't like Schubert. You have to have it. Next, Zell. Remember him? One of the all-time great Schubert Ninths, one of the all-time great Schubert Eighths. His Schubert was, like I said, the perfect combination of lyricism and discipline, and it's just completely winning and fantastic. So those are 3 of the ones that we talked about. And then if you add in the Bernstein and the Klemperer, we've already covered 5 recordings of the unfinished, and there are more to come. Everyone has done it. Even I did it. It was the first piece I ever played timpani in. I mean, you know, it's the reason, of course, is because it's technically a very easy work for a modern orchestra to play. It really is. It is not an easy work for the conductor to interpret because there are some real issues, particularly with pacing in the first movement. And to my thinking anyway, you know, the first movement of the Eighth is as close as Schubert ever got to Bruckner. And, you know, that was quite an extraordinary thing. Hang on one second. I'm just going to turn down the volume here so we don't get more little bell dingies. It's so annoying. I always forget to do that. But anyway, you know, Bruckner wrote sonata movements that have 3 subjects, and the first movement of the Schubert has that opening thing, which isn't really an introduction. It's a theme, and then another theme, and then the famous lyrical, technically second subject. But there are really 3 independent objects, and the development section consists primarily of the opening introductory thing and the lyrical second thing. And so, I have always wondered, though, in the coda of the first movement, it's one of those moments where, Schubert writes one of those long diminuendo hairpins, which may have been an accent, and everybody sort of takes the end of the first movement as if it's just collapsing in exhaustion and misery. I kind of think it would be cool, just to keep a good solid forte on that last chord, bum, 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 instead of the way it usually happens. I really think that there's a case to be made for maintaining the volume and not playing the piece as a descent into total defeat and exhaustion. But that's me. Anyway, now we're going to talk about performances that we did not discuss in connection with the Schubert Ninth. But a lot of these, of course, will be in complete cycles and are also worth hearing for the Schubert Ninth, as well as, in some cases, all the rest of them. So, here's a sleeper. Riccardo Muti with the Vienna Philharmonic on EMI, now Warner. This is a terrific Schubert symphony cycle. Muti did some wonderful recordings with the Vienna Philharmonic, including late Mozart symphonies too. And nobody pays any attention to them at all. In fact, nobody really pays any attention to Muti anymore anyway, even though he's in Chicago and he's got a major orchestra and all that. And I've heard some of the stuff he's done there, and I think he's sort of, maybe a little over the hill. I don't know, because I'm not there every day, or every week to hear what he's been doing. But my impression is that he's wearing a little thin. But this was a beautiful, beautiful Schubert cycle that no one cares about. And it has a great unfinished and a beautiful ninth. And, if you get a chance to hear some of it, give it a shot. I really think it could surprise you. You may find it very, very unexpectedly terrific. Next, Herbert Blomstedt. He's a terrific Schubert conductor. He did this cycle with the Staatskapelle Dresden. Also has a great ninth. One of the commentators mentioned it, and absolutely, it's terrific ninth. And the unfinished is magnificent. He remade some of these in San Francisco. They're also magnificent. Blomstedt is one of those guys. He's so natural and effortless in this music. And his unfinished is as organic and shapely a performance as you'll ever hear. This has been issued and reissued several times in different ways on different labels, but give yourself an opportunity to hear some Blomstedt and Schubert. You won't be sorry. Next, Charles Mackerras. Oh, gosh. Like I said, the conductor who's never made a bad record, and this is not one of them. This is the Scottish Chamber Orchestra on Telarc, the Ninth, which is very, very, very good, and the Unfinished, which is absolutely beautiful. It's chamber orchestra, the textures are light, it's period style, but with none of the disadvantages because it's being played on modern instruments, and it's an absolutely first-rate, lovely performance in every way. And if you want to hear something that's sort of more period or classical in its proportions and influence, then you really should listen to Mackerras, because he will never steer you wrong. You won't have, well, it's okay, but if only the violins could play in tune, or they didn't do this weirdness, or there was a little more vibrato in the strings, maybe, who knows. It's a beautiful, beautiful performance. And Mackerras never lets academicism get in the way of musicality, and that's what's so important. However, we have to choose one. I have to choose one. There's one that has been with me for decades. I don't think it's ever been beaten. It is one of the most beautiful performances of anything that I have ever heard in my entire life. And unfortunately, I have it in a single disc, but here it's in a giant cube. Excuse me, please. Eugen Joachim with the Boston Symphony. Now, remember, you heard Munch do the Schubert Eighth, one of the cosmically great versions with the Boston Symphony. I think the Boston Symphony really had a special feeling for this particular work for some reason. In any case, this is absolutely one of the great performances of anything by anybody. And so if you are looking for an unfinished symphony that is perfect, absolutely perfect in every conceivable way, then you really owe it to yourself to hear Joachim with the Boston Symphony on Deutsche Grammophon. You can still find it separately. I know it's available in Japan, and you won't believe just how effective and lovely this performance is. It's extraordinary. So keep on listening, folks, and thank you.